Boo!
I'm scared already.
Yes, I am a scary man with a big beard.
What's going on, boys and girls? You are watching the BeeRPad. That over there is the man in black, Marcus Beer.
Galaxy Defender. Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry. Slap happy chappy.
Yeah.
Hello, my dear. And that man in black with his little hat and his scarily blue hair is Raymondo Padilla in the house in his horrible IDOS freaking vintage man shitty t-shirt. But yes, any hooters. What are we talking about today, Ray?
Well, we are still getting in the mood for Halloween. Last time we talked about scary movies and TV shows and the most vile candy in the world. And we are going back to our roots, as it were, professionally, and talking about the 10 scariest video games of all time.
What do you mean, like Connect Star Wars?
No, I do not mean scary like Superman 64. I mean games that actually frightened you, gave you nightmares, haunted your days.
Gave you the willies.
Yeah. I mean, scary is different things to different people, especially over different mediums. So, Marcus, my question to you is what makes a scary game in your mind?
Jump scares are good.
Yeah.
I also, those things, random jump scares even better. A sense of foreboding. Anything that can crank up the tension is always good as well. And then it just depends. I mean, you'll see in my selection, there's a couple of classics in there that were not necessarily cutting edge graphics or gameplay or complex control systems. But this is something perhaps the younger generation won't understand because they have all these fantasy graphics. But back in the day, I mean, we were playing these games and it was as much our imagination as it was the graphics and the gameplay that we were playing. Because obviously, if you look at games from then and you look at them now, it's night and later that night. I mean, it's there's a big difference. So yes, I mean, story works, setting. I'm a sucker for Lovecraftian type things. So yeah, that's my multifaceted answer. What about you, Ray? What makes you all tingly in not a good way?
I'm big on sound design in terms of, or even like a lack of sound. Like some of our picks are outer space games, and the darkness and the lack of sound in space scares the shit out of me.
Well, that's because in space nobody can hear you shout.
That's right. So eerie music too. I mean, last week we talked about the music in Halloween, the movie, and that kind of theme really sticks with you. Story, like you said, twisted and messed up things. Even I do like my jump scares, of course, but like a twisted story is something that I will think about, forever. In survival horror games, monster design is big. Mm-hmm. There's one monster in here that will haunt the dreams for the rest of my life, and I think the same holds true for anyone.
Your penis again?
No.
Okay.
My penis is angelic.
Okay.
Will this get us age restricted on YouTube? Let's see.
Penis.
So why don't we kick things off? You're going first because that's how I numbered it.
Oh, okay. I'm going first. Am I? I got to remember. All right. So the first one on my list is, as far as I'm concerned, an absolute PlayStation classic. It had a fantastic sequel. It had a remaster for the more current gen consoles. It had a TV series on the HBO with Pedro Pascal. I am, of course, talking about The Mandalorian. I am talking about The Last of Us. Just simply a wonderful take on the zombie genre, heavy on the story, some, that one and its sequel, some incredibly tough decisions to make, beautifully voice acted, gorgeous game. I think it was PS3. It was the first one. So even for the PS3, it was an absolutely gorgeous game for its time. Like I said, excellent story. And I dare anyone playing that game not to feel the hairs on the back of their necks get all tingly the first time you're crouched up against the wall and there's clickers walking around, because those shitty fuckers are scary. So yes, I mean, I couldn't actually have just gone with the entire Last of Us collection, both 1 and 2, because they're both incredibly incredibly terrifying. But yeah, I mean, one was the one. It's one of those games that when I play it, I know it's a game, but I feel this pressure,
Right.
that I'm like, this trepidation, if you will, that, oh, am I doing this right? Oh, what happens if oh my God, what's down there? And that to me is a beautiful game design. And it really, if it can instill or evoke that feeling in me, I mean, I'm all in. I mean, it's always, most games you can play and they're like, okay, do, this is a game, I'm going to do this and this. If I fuck up, I'm just going to go back to the start. But Last of Us, I mean, you really care about the protagonists. The clickers and various other things are terrifying, including the other humans, because we know the humans are wankers. So yes, that is my choice, and that's number 5 on my list, number 10 on our list. So let's go to 9/5 with you, and tell me, what do you got? What's your first entry in our top 10 horror games of all time?
So this is probably the most jump scariest of my picks. I don't think that's a real word, but I'm going with it.
Jump scare laden?
Jump scare laden. Yes, that is better. It is Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, this game is also the most recent game. It's a 2014 release, multi-platform. And guys, some of these games, these older games, I'm probably going to get the details wrong. So please feel free to correct me in the comments section and comment away. We will address everything later. So you play a night watchman, the security staff at a place called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which is like a pastiche for Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know
which
if
is
they
also
have
one of the most terrifying places on earth. As somebody not from this locale, the first time I went to a Chuck E. Cheese with of my own volition. Well, not of my own volition. I was just saying, whoever came up with that shit is one creepy motherfucker. Please continue.
Did you have anything like that in England? I was curious as I was thinking about this.
God no. God, no. We didn't have anything like that in Wales either, where I'm from.
So people overseas or not in America or not familiar with Chuck E. Cheese. Chuck E. Cheese is a restaurant / arcade with these animatronic puppets that kids go for to have their birthday parties and everything. And these animatronic puppets can be a little scary. Although I remember as a kid, my friend and I got kicked out for ripping off Chuck E. Cheese's tail. So,
you little vandal.
So in this game, you are the security watchman, and these animatronic puppets are actually alive or possessed, and they try to kill humans. The early explanation is that they see humans as an endoskeleton, and they try to stuff humans into animal costumes, which kills them in the process.
Furries.
And one of the things I like for survival horror games are the kinds of weapons. Since you're a security guard, you mainly have tools. You can control doors and things like that, but you don't have like a semi-automatic machine gun to fight these demonic puppets. So to me, that adds to the sense of fear. To me, the puppets themselves are scary. I mean, look at these guys. These guys are messed up.
They are terrifying. I mean, it's basically the gap between the eyes and the skull. It's anything with something that's sunken way back and dead looking, if you will. I mean, I've not seen anything that scary outside of a Donald Trump party at Mar-a-Lago.
So later on in the story, you discover that these animatronic puppets, and there will be spoilers on my picks throughout. These games are old.
It's a 9-year-old game, for God's sake.
So later on, you discover these aren't demonically possessed animatronics. they're actually possessed by the souls of children that were killed by the guy that started the franchise. So, well, that was a big shocker for me. I'm like, wow, that got really dark out of nowhere. So
What you mean? Child murder is not one of your more cheerful gaming
no.
aspects? No, okay.
So that was another reason I found it scary. I liked that you get more out of the story. It's a small independent game, but there's more layers to a story through each replay. And I think when you find out about the child possession after the third replay, that could be wrong, but I think I'm remembering it correctly. But yeah, scary puppets, messed up child murder. That's why this game is on my list.
And that game is obviously also a movie that actually hits the multiplexes
Right.
this weekend. Or if you have Peacock, just stream it there and don't put any money into the fucking movie, because I'm not a big fan of the person who made the game. Anyway, enough of that. What are we looking at next? Is this my turn now? I
It is
believe
your
it is,
turn.
isn't it? So, look, had to put it in. I mean, let's face it, this is the one trick pony speaking. This is the game I've talked about more than any other, because it's one of my proudest accomplishments, and it is Fear. First person shooter from 2005. First encounter, Assault Recon. Well, that for an acronym. Squoze it in there. Now, the whole thing with Fear, I mean, and obviously there's been a couple of expansion packs or DLCs, and there's been sequels. But the first Fear is the story of a little girl who's got psychic powers, and she gets kidnapped. Her name's Alma. She looks like she's been stolen from the ring. Any and all similarities thoroughly unintentional, as I had to say a lot back in 2005 when I was repping the game. But this is a game that has the great little jump scares in it, the ones that we've talked about. You'll turn around and you'll catch a little shot of Alma out the corner of your eye before she dissolves away. There's a bad guy named Paxton Fettel. I mean, how about that? I mean, you look that up in the top 10 list of bad guy names that you could give anybody. Paxton fucking Fettel. He is, evil, monstery type, experimenty type guy. The game, obviously, your character has some supernatural powers of your own. You can slow time, hit the space bar while you're playing the game, and it goes slow. And it was bullet time basically, and it worked really, really well. The game was incredibly well received. Couple of high points, I think, as I mentioned last week. I got to work with John Carpenter
Right.
during the promotion of the game. Also, when was it E3 2005, our booth was right next to Electronic Arts, and Steven Spielberg, of all people, had just signed a big deal with EA to produce some games that became, I think there was a building block game, and that was about it. But he was being toured around the EA booth. And I saw him, and I just said, I've got this scary game. I really would love for you to have a look at it. So Rob Loftus, my producer, and Steven Spielberg crowded into this booth where we had, like an arcade setup for the PC with a drape, and it was all dark. And he watched the demo of the game, and he came out and said it's the coolest game he's ever seen in his life. And you could just see the EA rep's face fall. So yeah, look, it's it's one of those ones that was it the greatest game of all time? Absolutely not. Does it need a reboot? Absolutely, because I thought it had a lot of things really, really well. It did have some criticisms. The middle section does drag. That's why I never let anybody play the middle section until it came to review time, because I'm clever.
Very nice. Who owns the IP now?
That would be Warner Brothers and Monolith.
Right.
So Warner Brothers owned Monolith, but Vivendi had the rights to the game, and then I think the sequels came out through WB. So yeah, that's my choice. I mean, it's a classic little game. You could probably run it on an iPad now. I mean, things have changed so much.
Oh yeah.
So yes, that's my choice. You played it, Ray. What did you think of Fear?
Very ahead of its time for that kind of horror. I like the mental aspect of it, because it isn't just like shocking. I mean, there are the jump scares, as you said too, but it's the storytelling sticks with you, and it makes those scenes more powerful. So I like that combination.
Yeah, as armor gets more powerful in the game, you start to get these visions. You do have some of these sort of like not hellscapes, but I mean, things start to, go all
Yeah,
creepy.
the perception of what the reality is, like, yeah, it does change throughout the game. That actually is copied in one of my picks later.
Okay. Well, there you go. Let's get on with your pick. What's next for you, big boy?
As I mentioned, I am not cool with darkness and silence, and there's a lot of darkness and silence, but also scary monsters and scary fights in Dead Space. So this game came out in 2008, multi-platform. Yeah, I just love that whole atmosphere, because when did that line originally come from? In space, no one can hear you scream.
The OG Alien.
Aha.
That was the tagline for the Ridley Scott Alien movie in 1978.
Right. So Alien singular.
Yeah. Alien singular.
This story was co-written by Warren Ellis, who is also one of my favorite comics writers. He wrote the first Castlevania series on Netflix. So he is a twisted fellow, and you can kind of see his storytelling at the end, where there's a twist where it kind of makes you question what happened in this game, what was real, what wasn't. This is kind of messed up. Why am I alone now? So it's very clever writing, and I don't want to say it's an ambiguous ending, because physically what happens to your character. You don't know where things leave off with him mentally, which I think is probably more interesting, and also sets up things for the sequels to this game. So I am a big fan of Dead Space. Dead Space 2 was also really good, but to me, this was unique because so many survival horror games were, fighting undead or fighting crazy monsters on Earth and settings you could identify with because they take place in our planet. I cannot identify with being in outer space. So that is really intriguing to me. And the atmosphere in the game is just so good.
And let's raise a cup to Visceral, who are no longer with us.
Yes.
Which fucking sucks. Now, I got to say, I actually have, it's the Dead Space remastered sitting on my hard drive.
Ooh.
I haven't played it yet. It's one of those ones that every time I go to click on it to start up, and I've got other games that are, I'm still playing Starfield, for example. But I do appreciate what everybody was saying about the game. I'm glad it got a remaster. Obviously, it got 2 sequels,
right?
And it does, it does seem to be a genuinely scary game. And I remember at one point, I think it was Dead Space 2 or 3. There was a rep at EA, a VP of douchebaggery or something, who decided to talk about microtransactions in the game. And how microtransactions were the future, and this, that, and the other. And if I could, and in my mind, if there ever was a game that didn't need microtransactions, it's this sort of game. It's one purchase and done. If you want to buy DLC, that's fine too. But I don't think you need, character packs or anything, that sort of shit.
Right.
And it just, yeah, it's it was one of those things that for the longest time soured me on actually picking up the game. But I think that was more down to the fact that this is in the 2010s, early 2010s, EA in particular was riddled with douchebag VPs that you couldn't move without hitting one at E3.
They were so aggressive with microtransactions.
Yeah, they were aggressive and they were pathetic. And I actually think I'm kind of glad that they kind of got put in their place for a long time. They became a little more humble. And I think a lot of these people have actually now left the industry. Good fucking riddance. I mean, obviously, we do know that microtransactions and loot boxes are still rife like a cancer in the games industry. But this was one of the first ones, and it caused a lot of controversy. And yes, Frank something or other. I think the guy was.
I think we have the European Union to thank for tamping a lot of that down, because they put a lot of legislation over there that, that publishers have to disclose a lot of what their, packs and stuff offer.
Yeah, I mean, it's gambling. It
Yeah.
is gambling. Any of these things is gambling, especially with FIFA, Madden, or whatever. And I think it's still the issue with FIFA, or what is now EA Sports FC, or whatever
Yeah.
it's called.
Yeah.
And I do have a problem with it. I mean, I have a problem with people buying Magic the fucking Gathering cards and getting fucking shitty duplicates over and over.
Right.
I mean, it's a shell game. It is literally, it's the New Jersey Boardwalk. Keep an eye on the queen, and you lose $10. I have a problem with those, and I really don't think they belong in video games. So yes, moving on.
Okay. One more tangent. I wanted to ask you,
tangent me, baby.
You're more of a sci-fi guy than I am. So what do you think of outer space as a setting for horror games? Does it work for you, or is that not what you want for outer space?
I think I might answer that question with a choice later on in my list. So if we can revisit that, I think
that's true. That's true.
Let's revisit.
Yes.
All right.
Now, moving on to your pick, you're going old school console.
Yes. I'm going way back to the dark days of the PlayStation 1. And a game came out that in Japan was called Biohazard, and in the US and Europe it was called Resident Evil. And it was the very first time that we'd seen this sort of game on a console. Now, I am going to talk about another game that's very similar to this movie in a little while. But I will say that this was one of the first games to give me an actual nightmare after playing it. I remember it clearly. I was living in Bromley, South London, and my then girlfriend had gone to bed. I had my PS1, and I'd been playing the game for about 4 hours nonstop, and it was like getting to 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's a section in the there's a level a room that you go into, and as you go in, there's a hole in the wall, big hole, and out of that big hole comes a fucking huge snake. Now, I'm not a fan of snakes because we didn't have many snakes back in the UK. I mean, here you have a lot. Australia, you have hundreds of thousands. All over the world, lots of snakes. They can kill you. I'm not a big fan of them, but that made me jump, and I'm like, okay, enough. I think it's time to go to bed. I may have had a couple of snifters of something along the way as well, some little glasses of scotch or something, and so I went to bed. And that night, all I could dream about was that there were holes in the walls of my apartment, and big snakes were coming out. Now. So that's why it's in here. I mean, it is a scary game. I mean, obviously, Resident Evil / Biohazard has been going for decades now. The game itself, not all that great. I mean, you've got to remember, it had the shittiest controls: rotate left, rotate right. It had the ammo and plants thing where everything was so fucking limited. It was really kind of sadistic. It was one of those. It's one of the first sort of like Japanese sadistic experience of games that I'd experienced, and they are past masters at it. They really do know how to turn gaming into a really bad form. Now, that's obviously not OG Resident Evil,
right?
That is a remaster, and the original looks 1,000 times worse than that. And I'm very upset you didn't find the original RE1 because it's not looking good. But yeah, but again, the game had something. I mean, if they'd have had a better control system, it would have been great. And the other thing is running into rooms. You run into a room, you go through a door, and the camera angle changes on you. So if you keep on pressing in the same direction you were going, you'll go straight back out again. That has always been a bone of contention for me as well. And again, it's very, very Japanese, and it's game design, and I think it's obviously worked for for them, and a lot of people love that. But for me, it was just ooh. I think actually after about a week or so on and off of playing that, I got so pissed off with the game that I actually snapped the disc. But on the plus side, it did give me a nightmares, and it is a genuinely scary game, especially as our experience of scary games before that was super limited.
Right. And I kind of think the scariness peaked for that franchise in 1, maybe 2, because by the time you get to like RE4, you have like a pretty expansive arsenal of automatic weapons, which to me makes it less survival
Yeah,
horror and more action, straight up action.
I think 2 was definitely more action based. I think it really did have the ramp. The 1, you really did feel like you're on your own as soon as whichever character you picked, which you split up with the other one went off in a separate direction, and you really did feel alone in that creepy old house. Whereas the second game, Raccoon City, really starts to become a character.
Right.
What's next, my friend? What do you got? Hit me, hit me, hit me.
Sticking around to that same era, I picked Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, which is a 2002 GameCube release. This is co-written and directed by Dennis Dyack of Silicon Knights fame. And Dennis is a big Lovecraft fan, so a lot of his environments and a lot of his character designs are very Lovecraftian. And so you play this game in a haunted setting, but you play in chapters. So each chapter you control a different character, so you get a different perspective of it. But what makes it interesting, and I think I have a screen of, yes, here are a bunch of the different characters that you can play. And also you get a taste of his character design.
They are definitely terrifying. Really terrifying to look at. Yeah, especially the one on the far left-hand side. I mean, constipated much?
He misses his doggy. He's just angry.
That's a dude?
Is it not?
Far left.
I can't tell.
The white tunicky thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that
okay.
Is that an Aztec kind of robe thing? I don't know.
It's kind of terrifying, but anyway.
Yeah. So the game uses something called a sanity meter, and the meter rises like each time you get scared by a monster, or each time you're put in a life-threatening situation, it goes up. And as the sanity meter goes up, the environment starts to change and it looks all weird. It's reflecting that your grasp of reality is starting to go away. But sometimes you need to manipulate it because certain events are only triggered if your sanity meter reaches a certain level. So it's an interesting way to manipulate that. I thought it was very clever, especially for 2002, and especially as a GameCube game, because that's not the kind of things you expect to play. You expect to play your Zeldas and Marios and stuff like that. So to have a genuine survival horror game as a GameCube exclusive, that was different. So that was a nice surprise for me. I remember thinking, wow, this came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting that for GameCube at all. But I'm happy it was there, and I'm happy it made the list.
Never played it, didn't own a GameCube. That's one of the few consoles I decided to totally skip over. It just wasn't for me. I think I was more into a more sort of like, not grown up, but just a different style of games that and since, I mean, to be honest with you, my record with Nintendo has not been good over the last sort of like 15 years. Ever since, I mean, I was loved my Super NES, and for me and the original Game Boy, they were the peak Nintendo for me, for my experience, for what I need. But it's cool that that it definitely does sound like the most un-Nintendo-y Nintendo game you could ever imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So your next pick is even more old school. What do you got there?
Oh, this is a trilogy. It's not that one for a start. It is a trilogy back in the day. And now this is the one that, as far as I'm concerned, predates Biohazard. And Biohazard / Resident Evil ripped this fucking game off. Because when this game came out, the PlayStation 1 and Resident Evil were nowhere near. I mean, they were barely a fucking twinkle in Mr. Sony's eyes at the time. But I am talking about Alone in the Dark, the original trilogy. Now, this game has been released and tried to be rebooted so many times, and every time it's shit. And I'll tell you why, because they don't get it. Every time they've tried to reboot it, they try to modernize it, try to do this, that, and the other. Now, what Infogrames did, and Infogrames, if you don't know who Infogrames are because you're under 40, Infogrames were a quite a powerhouse video game company back in the early to mid 90s. I mean, maybe all the way through to perhaps the late 90s. They had a lot of important games, and they had this trilogy. They also had H.P. Lovecraft, Shadow of the Comet, and Call of Cthulhu, two incredibly wonderful point-and-click games that were scary as fuck. But they didn't make this list because I wanted to focus on Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark is about Edward Carnby, a supernatural detective who gets an invitation to a spooky mansion.
Ooh.
Now, sound familiar? Resident Evil? Yeah, rip-off merchants. Now, ironically, the control system on Alone in the Dark, rotate left, rotate right, walk forward, action button. Sound familiar? Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, again, my theory about Capcom ripping them off just got a little bit more interesting. But anyway, this was PC, and this came on floppy disks. But for the first one came on floppy disks. They eventually moved to CD-ROM, which was understandable. But I think you have a picture of the graphics there.
I do. Yeah, let's check that
And
out.
this is my boy Edward, and he's fighting with a very pixelated sword against a peg-legged, piratey, ghosty type thing. Now, the great thing about this is that it was more about story than anything else. You'd basically, and it was hard. This game was hard. You'd start at the gates, you'd walk in, and in the garden you'd see something, you'd go off and explore, and it would kill you. Shit would kill you right away. Limited inventory for weapons. Sound familiar? Limited weaponry for any sort of potion healing type thing. Again, sound familiar much? And so you had 3 of these games, with the third one, by the way, being a Wild West game set, obviously here in the US. I think it was called Slaughter Gulch or something, but totally random. But I mean, the great thing was the story. It was the first of its kind. We'd have these sort of like 3D isometric, the 3D sort of like pseudo 3D isometric graphics. It had the limited weapon management. Weapons would break. You'd run out of ammunition. Control system was not fun. You'd hit the space bar to try and look at everything, to try and search something or whatever. You find a table or a chest of drawers, and Edward would say, "But there's nothing there." And literally, you could actually just spam it. You'd hit the space bar, and you go, "There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nothing there." If you got really bored. But it was a great trilogy of games that need a reboot, deserve a reboot, and deserve the big sort of like budget treatment, because I think that's definitely something we are lacking. This whole Lovecraftian aspect, this Edwardian or Victorian era type stuff. There's a lot to be said for it. I mean, it's certainly a time period that takes my interest. I mean, having grown up in the UK, and we remember Jack the Ripper and a lot of other things. So yeah, and I think it's because the lack of technology and the fact that you're in these buildings and that you are alone in the dark, as it says on the box. So yeah, that's a classic for me. Probably unplayable nowadays because again, control issues. There's probably no keyboard, no joypad compatibility. But I'd love to see all 3 of them expanded upon and remade. Now, I don't know. I know Atari had the rights and they remade. They did Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare. That was fucking horrible. I know Uwe Boll made a movie. That was fucking horrible. Yeah, so yes, I'd love to see this trilogy remade and given some love and attention, because I think it really could be quite a scary action game.
And to follow up on Marcus's point about Infogrames, if you YouTube Infogrames Rocks My World, you'll be treated to the finest promotional song in the video game business ever. It is that good. So if you can find the Infogrames Rocks My World song, it will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Oh, I don't know. There's one. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to take that bet because there is one that Acclaim did in the late '90s when they had Batman Forever and True Lies and a bunch of other stuff, and they had a sizzle reel that they showed at an event once, and it had a rap, and the rap was so bad. And I remember one of the lines because it talked about True Lies, and it said True Lies. He said he'd be back, and now he's back as a super agent. Talking about Arnie.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know.
So
I
mean,
will.
the
I will
'90s
put
was
my
not.
money. I will put my money on Infogrames.
Okay. Well, I mean, they are French. So, but yes, there is the '90s. Oh my God, we had such fun. If you're in the media or even PR at the time. But oh yeah, there's a reason we locked that stuff away in our memories. What you got next?
I have another 2002 multi-platform game called Fatal Frame. Now, what I love so much about this game is the atmosphere. Basically, you play a young girl looking for her missing brother in a haunted mansion, and your only weapon is a magical camera. Now, put aside the logic that it's idiotic for this girl to be running around in a haunted mansion armed only with a camera, magical or not. But it adds to the sense of helplessness. It amplifies the fear because when she sees these ghosts, she only has a camera to fight them with. So that premise makes it interesting compared to other survival horror games with guns where it could actually harm things. And the atmosphere itself, the haunted mansion is really well designed. And as you go through the game, it becomes creepier and scarier and more into the occult. You find that you're dealing with evil spirits and you encounter a gate to hell. And there are multiple endings. So you do find your brother, but what happens to him and what happens to you can be different depending on the choices you make. So you can save your brother. Your brother can choose not to come with you and hang out with a good spirit that will guard the gate to hell forever. And I like the choices that this set up. And it really stood out. It was really different and distinct compared to Silent Hill and Resident Evil at the time, just because you're a little girl with a camera. It also was one of the weirdest press events that I ever went to. It was Tecmo. They took us to this allegedly haunted woods, south of San Francisco. And basically they drove us out there. We all sat around a campfire and this old guy told us stories about the haunted woods. And I kept waiting for some PR person to jump out and try to scare us. But no, it was just an old guy telling us stories about haunted woods when there was no punchline to the event. So it was kind of weird. Like you're out here for that. And
then the PR person came out and said, if you don't give us 90% scores, we're leaving you here.
So eventually they gave us flashlights that we can explore the woods with by ourselves, which I never thought was very smart. I'm like, you're letting a bunch of mostly unathletic and uncoordinated video game journalists run around in the woods. And
that to me is a lawsuit waiting to happen, no matter what disclaimers and waivers you sign. I mean, we were all, we were smoking, drinking, junk food eating fiends back then. And twisted ankles, broken legs, etc., etc. I mean, that seems right up there as when Doom, back in the day, I think it was Doom 2, they sent bags of offal to media in the UK. Wow. So much so, I think it was like one of the editors in the Times got a bag of offal, opened at his desk, and it went all over him.
We did have to sign death waivers pretty much before the event, but I don't know how those really hold up if anyone actually died during the event. I did forget to flash the screen. This is Miko, the character from Fatal Frame. I believe she comes back in Fatal Frame 3 as well. So that is what you have to do in this game. Now we are coming to our final picks, Marcus.
But I
Um,
think Fatal Frame now needs a reboot where it can be all about Instagram.
that's true. You don't really have cameras these days. I
Yeah,
mean, I guess
everything
you
is
have your
all
phone.
basically you have to rescue your brother who's gotten involved with an Instagram model who is dragging him slowly to hell because all she's doing is making him take pictures while she poses, and you have to stop them
That could
by
work.
disabling the camera. Whole new game.
Yeah, I mean, in the Care Bears movie, they fought an evil book. They didn't bother to just close the book and end of movie. You can fight an evil phone, demonically possessed phone.
Just flush it down the toilet
Yes, they actually did a bit like that
and
in
hide all the rice.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Like
Yes.
it's like turn the phone off. Conflict resolved. So let's go with your final pick, Marcus. What do you have?
My final pick just got teased because you put the fucking picture up already.
Yeah.
It is In Space. Nobody can hear you scream or shout or anything like that. Alien Isolation. Now, this is obviously a game that is not. It's true survival horror because you have to avoid the xenomorph. You have to avoid the alien. It's on the ship. Yeah, I think you played Ripley's daughter and or granddaughter, one of the two. But anyway, you're on a ship. The alien is loose. It's almost just you. And you can't beat the alien. You can't destroy the alien, no matter what weaponry you have. This thing is a behemoth and it's coming for you. So you have to hide. And the tension levels when you're trying to avoid this or trying to get out of it, get out of the area where it is and lock a door behind you. I mean, there are some weapons you can jerry rig, but they're not exactly, we're not talking about lightsabers or small tactical nuclear weapons. And this is a game that gives me the heebies and indeed the jeebies. I'm such a huge sucker for this sort of stuff. There's nothing more terrifying than when you hear the aliens getting close and you dive into, say, a locker and you close the door and you can peer through the slats in the locker, and as you move your head left and right, it gives you the field of vision, and you see the alien in the distance and then it seems to disappear, and almost like in a movie, up it pops right in front of you, rips the door off and kills you.
Of course.
It's scary. It's intense. I mean, it's such a roller coaster. I mean, you could be tootling along at a fair old pace, trying to get to your objective for that thing. You're going through this open space, and you'll just hear it in the distance. And I dare you not to be terrified. The fact that the game is probably 7 or 8 years old, maybe even older. It's very easy to get. It's cheap. I think it's on all platforms. But I mean, if you have a medium PC nowadays, you could run that game on hyper, play it with ultra mode, play it with some headphones in, some noise canceling ones with the lights out, and put some Depends on because you're gonna shit yourself. So that's my choice. That is the number one because it really does. It captures that feeling in the first movie, in Ridley Scott's first movie, Alien movie. And obviously we don't talk about Alien Covenant and all that crap since, but it just gives you that feeling. And there is another Alien game that I wanted to quickly mention.
Yeah.
This came out on the ZX Spectrum back in the 80s, 48K game. And it was an Alien game, not 3D or anything like that. You had to traverse a ship, but you had the motion tracker. And the motion tracker, beep, beep, that is still one of the scariest things that you could ever imagine. Knowing, and they obviously, they took that from Aliens, but I mean, you think about that scene in Aliens where they're all congregated in the med center, and they hear the beep and the beep and the beep. It's getting closer and getting closer, and they're like, "Oh, got their guns out," and it's then beep, multiple pickups, and it's like, where are they? Where are they? And they look up, and one of them peeks his head up through into the ceiling, and they're all there. And that, my friends,
that's a great scene.
Terrifying. Great movie. The first two Alien movies, absolutely Fantastic.
And to clarify for our American viewers, ZX is ZX in American.
Yeah, but it's ZX because it's not called the King's English. It's not called American English. It's called the King's English. It used to be called the Queen's English, but she done died. So yes, it is a ZX Spectrum 48K, rubber keyboard, horrible beep chip for sound, color clash a go-go, but still, it. So many great games developers from the UK and Europe, in fact, got their start on that machine. And Rare,
Yeah.
the people who, Rare used to be called Ultimate Play the Game, and they were the premier developer of games on the Spectrum. And I still think that their stuff is probably still the best shit they've ever done. So anyway, enough of that. Let us move on to the number one, or your number one, because Alien Isolation was my number one. Now, I've got a funny feeling that I know what this one is.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's Faith, or if it's Benny, or if it's Silent Hill.
Yes.
Get it? Faith Hill, Benny
Yes.
Hill. You see what I did? I set you up there.
I know, but then the Benny Hill theme started playing in my head, and then I just lost track.
And I guarantee you, if they put the Benny Hill theme tune in Silent Hill 2, game would be much better for it.
Oh, I don't know. I think this is a fantastic game.
I'm teasing. So tell me, Raymond, why Silent Hill 2 over all the other Silent Hills, of which there have been?
Yeah, there are two reasons in particular. One is the story, and one is the monster design. So this is a 2001 game. The tone was allegedly influenced by Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. They told us that prior to the game's release, and it didn't make sense to me until I got to the end. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's what it's about. So it's another game where there are multiple endings depending on the choices you make. It has one of the most distinct monsters in a survival horror game, Pyramid Head. If you play this game, Pyramid Head, it will be with you for the rest of your life. To make him less scary, I kept thinking of they might be Giant's Triangle Man to make him less scary.
He looked like a Toblerone.
A fine chocolate available only at airports, I believe. Do you have a giant
It's empty because I did actually finish it, but I brought it back from my UK trip. The boxes.
Yeah.
You gotta. I mean, so yes. Imagine this. Look at that. I'm the monster from Silent Hill.
So the writing in this game is also pretty excellent. So the premise is you play this man whose wife died of a sickness several years ago, but somehow you get this letter from your dead wife saying, "Come find me in Silent Hill." So you go to Silent Hill, you find a woman that looks exactly like your wife, but personality-wise is totally different. So you don't know what the hell's going on. You fight monsters, demonic, creepy things, and later you find out that they are manifestations of your guilt because your sick wife, you actually euthanized because you didn't want to see her suffer.
Oh,
yeah. And
wow, that's a head trip right there.
Yeah.
As somebody who has actually got the directive, as far as I'm concerned, when my disease gets super terminal, I'm off to fucking Switzerland to eat a lot of Toblerone and then get assisted suicide. But yeah, that's a real head. That's a head scrambler.
Yeah.
Now, I played the first Silent Hill. Wasn't really the biggest fan of it, to be honest with you. Again, not my thing. Did watch the Silent Hill movie, which was pretty awful. So yeah, it's interesting how you went with this one over the other one. But so let's talk about. I mean, Silent Hill. Let's talk about the PS demo.
Okay.
Do you remember that demo that came out?
I don't.
No, I think it might have been called PS or something else. It was obviously a Silent Hill demo that hit. Remember on the PlayStation Network?
Yeah, I remember it existing.
Yeah.
I don't remember the
and then they pulled it. They
Ah.
pulled it. I mean, we haven't had a decent Silent Hill game in a while, have we?
No, I mean they were supposed to remake it, and then there was another game that was supposed to be, part of the Silent Hill world, but it got pulled out of it for legal
PT, thank
reasons.
you, not
Yes,
PS, PT.
PT. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So to me too, it really peaked with 2. It is a franchise I hope they revisit again. They have remastered this game, so it's available with better graphics. But to me, it's the monster design, the story, um, because the multiple endings. There are some where your wife stays dead. There's one where you find a way to bring her back, but she's kind of messed up because people shouldn't be brought back from the dead. I think there's like 6 different endings, and yeah. Oh, I should mention the sound design because this has a great musical score, but also the way it uses quiet and the way it uses big shocking sounds to amplify the scares. The music was composed and the sound design was contributed by Akira Yamaoka, who's a longtime Konami talent. That fantastic guy. He's makes some fantastic music for many video game franchises, but a lot of people associate him with Silent Hill. And he's actually someone I got to spend time with. I had a good friend that worked at Konami, or I still have a friend. He's still there, not at Konami anymore. But he let me hang out with Akira a few times, and we went to a dance club with him. So it was kind of cool watching how a music composer dances, because you kind of see him. He's doing some like Street Fighter fireball shit where he's like moving the sound around, and it was just really fascinating to watch. Like it was almost like I could see him physically moving sound. So that was kind of a trip. And
What sort of drugs were you on?
I was not on any, which is cool. Maybe he was on a lot, which is why he was dancing
Maybe
so
they
awesome.
slipped you something. I don't know. Konami PR back in the day.
I
You know who they are.
I have been slipped drugs at video game events before, and
Yeah.
it's not always been great.
No,
So,
no. Obviously, roofing is not funny, and we just say
yes,
these things in jest. You should never, ever try to give somebody drugs if they
right.
don't want them.
Yes, don't pull an Ari Shafir and molly someone without their permission
Yes, none of
or
that
consent.
shit. It's sick, it's twisted, and you should be nice people. Okay, so what I take from this list is that there were a lot of really scary games over the last 30 years,
Yeah.
but none of them recently.
Also, yeah.
Nothing recently. I mean,
Um,
I think Alien Isolation is probably the most recent one. I know we've had reboots of Resident Evil 1 and, Silent Hill.
and
We've
I
had,
never played Dead Space 3, so I did play 2, but is 3
yeah,
recent?
three's probably within the last decade, maybe. But yeah, I think there's definitely maybe we're old and we're just too miserly to pay for games when we were so used to getting them for free. Hint, hint,
Right.
PR people. Look, millions of people watch the show. If you want us to promote your shit or talk about your shit, you need to send us codes, yo. But yeah, I think there is a lot of stuff that could be remade, and I was actually quite interested. And this is sort of like just on a tangent with regards to remakes and stuff like that. That Phil Spencer over at Xbox this past sort of like week has said that now that the Activision thing is going ahead, the purchase, that they are going to actively look at Activision's back catalog with a view to bringing some of these games back to life. And I think that's a great thing that that could happen for Activision IP. I mean, of course, I can't actually remember what Activision's IP is because for the longest time it was
Tony Hawk,
Tony Hawk, Guitar Hero, and Call of Duty.
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, I really can't remember what else they've done. And it's the same with EA, who have this amazing back catalog of games that I would love to see. And I would actually like to suggest a topic for perhaps in the coming weeks of games we would like to see remade. Now, and I'm
That
going
is
to
a
throw
fine
this,
topic.
and I'm going to throw this out to the audience. And I'm not going to set a limit. I mean, we can go back all the way to the Master System and the NES.
To Parcheesi,
That's
even.
Yes, to the Game of Life and Monopoly. We could play Bridge and Old Maid, for God's sake. No, I'm going back. I mean, there's a lot of games from the Sega Mega Drive era. I mean, I can think of two series from EA in Road Rash and the Urban /Jungle /Desert Strike series that I would love to see turned into updated, and because they were just great helicopter combat games. Dungeon Keeper's another one, and I'm just sort of like spitballing this list out here.
Great.
But yeah, there's so many of these games that could actually be really, really good and really well made nowadays. And the fact that they are just left to rot while these big companies, EA, Activision, etc., just churn out the same episodic content over and over and over.
Right.
Ubisoft's another one. Where the fuck is Sam Fisher? Where's Splinter Cell?
Right.
There's just so many of these games, and I think that we could actually put together a top 10, or hell, even a top 20 of games that we feel should be remade. And because we are experts in the field, this list is going to be banging because we know our shit, and it don't stink.
Yeah. No, we will definitely do this episode in the future. But for now, let me ask you this. Out of the games on the list, which one would you want remade or have a sequel to the most?
Well, I think I would love to see Alone in the Dark remade. That entire trilogy, and have it as an interlinking trilogy where you have the first one in the creepy house and the second one and the third one, and they're interlinked, and you've got Edward Carnaby and you've got his I think it's his sister or his cousin or whatever in later version, and I'd love to see that mapped out. I would love to see all that turned into a really, really good game, refined with modern graphics, modern control systems, things like difficulty levels, as opposed to making some of these just sadistically hard again. That's one I would like to see. Obviously, I'd love to see Fear remade, because I think it could be still an excellent shooter. But I would go with Alone in the Dark. What about you?
I would love to see a new Silent Hill that was good.
So you'd like a new Silent Hill, not a remake of Silent Hill 2?
Not a remake. Yeah, I'd like to see in that vein where there's some mind fuckery going on.
Okay, I mean, so in that case, that's not, since your question was remade. But if you're talking about a new version, I would like to see a new Alone in the Dark, written by somebody who's not a moron, and not decided by committee and focus group.
How about Night Shyamalan's Alone in the Dark?
Not so much, but I would maybe I would like to see Blumhouse's Alone in the Dark.
Oh yeah, that would be sweet.
Yeah.
Now, before we get out of here, let us get to our comments. Mark, hello, Mark. Always good to see you. Charles Entertainment Cheese. Is that really his middle name? I had no idea. He deserved to have his tail ripped off by me then, if that was his middle name. He also adds, love the first Dead Space, one of the best horror games ever made. Completely agree. Carlos asks, is the main character in Fatal Frame Hulk Hogan, brother? No, it was Miko.
Carlos. Dad, it's too early in the year for dad jokes, and it is October. So I suppose it is Halloween month, so horrific dad jokes are. Yeah, and he continues with this as about, could you imagine 15 to 20 predominantly male journalists?
Zoe was there too, so she probably would have.
Zoe would have kicked your ass.
Yeah.
Zoe probably would have kicked all your asses.
Yeah.
But yes, no. Let's. Okay, I think Mark's got a comment there about Resident Evil 7. I think he's got a point. But again, it's something to me. I played. I think it was RE5. I think it was on Xbox 360. It's one of the ones I got sent when I was still doing media, and I hated it so much. And it was just a bad game. It was just like this 3D action shooter. And it was just there was no scares to it at all. And you had the different characters, and it was just horrible. It put me off. It really did put me off. And I remember having big arguments with Shane Satterfield when I was at Game Trailers on the Invisible Walls podcast, where we just argued about how shit this game was, and he fucking loved it. And I accused him of being a Resident Evil fanboy. So yes.
Here is Mark's list. Guys, please, if you're not watching live and you're watching a replay, please share your list of the scariest games. For now, let's talk about Mark's.
Banging list. Resident Evil 4, that's the one set in Spain, yeah?
Yeah, that one was too actiony for me.
Yeah. that went off on a really different tangent. A lot of people really loved it, and I think that was a GameCube exclusive.
For 4,
I think 4 was a Nintendo exclusive.
Hmm.
My memory serves. Anywho, Alien Isolation, obviously, Dead Space, Last of Us, Dying Light. Dying Light is also another one that I considered because I really liked it, but it was one of those games that actually gave me motion sickness because you were doing the parkour and it had the little bob going to it, much like Mirror's Edge. So yeah, but I think that's actually a great list. Obviously, because a lot of the ones that we've suggested, in various shapes or forms are on there. So yeah,
you are correct. It was initially RE4 was initially a GameCube exclusive, but later got ported to other platforms when the exclusivity deal expired.
So this is the interesting thing. I can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday. But I can remember shit like that. This is what happens when you get old. My short-term memory shot to shit. My long-term memory, oh, look at me. I'm really smart. I can remember the Resident Evil 4 came on the fucking GameCube with an exclusive.
I can remember stupid, pretty much every line from Airplane, but nothing important that can help me make a living.
Good grief.
Also not scary, but shout out to Red Dead Revolver Undead Nightmare for best Halloween game. Certainly the one I go back to most.
Yeah, that was a very popular expansion. Carlos agrees with us in that RE5 and 6 were terrible.
Yeah.
7, okay.
I didn't play 7, so
excuse me.
Since both Mark and Carlos think highly of it, I will give it a shot because I think highly of you.
Yes, it should be on your list, but don't play 5. 5's shite. See, nobody likes 5. So yes, I actually think Carlos needs to give us his list
and check it twice.
Yes, give us your list, Carlos. But yes, if you are watching, let us know what your list is, and obviously, you can always like, subscribe, you can share.
We're all up here.
Yes, all our social medias. The reason we ask you to do that is, the more we can build our audience, the more we can go to people and say, if you give us access to this, we can talk about it. Because, these top 10 lists that we do are a lot of fun, but obviously we do also want to talk about a couple of things.
Right.
So
and for YouTube, the most important metric to them is watch hours. Now, I am not telling you to do this. Remember, I am not telling you to do this, but if you leave us playing on the background at work all day, which I am not telling you to do, that could help us.
No, you shouldn't be telling them to do that.
But I'm not telling you to do
that. Yeah, you shouldn't even bring it up, Ray. Hey, YouTube gods. If you're listening, he's just joking. He's not suggesting that people do it. So yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. So Carlos has a list of 2. I don't think he understood the rules.
No, hang on. No, he's just typing them out one at a time. All right. RE1, Dead Space, Dying Light. Alien Isolation. See?
He's copying your list. And one of mine. And one of Mark's.
Yeah, but my list is on point. There's none of this weird GameCube shit from 1806 of the fucking Polaroid game. There's a lot of people who don't even know what a camera is nowadays because they just think it's the clicky thing attached to their phone. But that's a good list. Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. So it is Halloween next week, I believe.
Yes.
And because it's Tuesday night, we will not be on next Tuesday night.
That's right.
But because we love you and we know that you would miss us, we will be going live on Monday night.
Monday.
So same back time, same back channel, but it will be Monday evening. And what are we talking about, Ray?
We are talking about Gen V, the spinoff of The Boys on Amazon Prime. This is I like The Boys a lot. Both the show and
I heard that about you, Ray, but hey, each to their own. You be you, my friend, and I will love and support you. Be you.
Gen V is definitely in the vein of The Boys, but there goes in directions that I wasn't expecting so far.
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't know. I'm not going to call it young adult version of The Boys,
Because it's still too
but
fucked up for young adults.
yeah, but it's sort of like medium younger. It's like it does have a vibe of it, sort of like a teenage version of The Boys. I mean, obviously it's set in college and stuff, but
how about
yes,
a young deviant adults? Maybe it's for them. So if you're a twisted young adult,
this is for you. And watch two old people talk about it and say, I don't know, when I was a lad, all we had to do was play with 2 sticks and a piece of string. And now everybody's taking V and have superpowers and they're ripping each other's tits off.
Or something like that. So that's what you have to look forward to again on Monday.
Because on Tuesday, I'll be scaring children.
He will be. This will be true. You should take videos of that and we can play them and do commentary on it.
Yeah, no, the wife doesn't like me doing that.
I know that, plus waivers, we would get sued.
Yes.
So, guys, thanks so much for watching. We will see you next time. Say goodbye, Marcus.
Goodbye, Marcus.